intelligent transportation. We'll cover 5 areas of focus, as well as a consensus-based approach to developing protocols. OmniAir's sister organization, OCS, OmniAir Certification Services, will provide an in-depth description of an industry-approved testing process for 6C and its lab accreditation capabilities. We have about 60 people registered for this webinar. Before we start, I'd like to make a few announcements. First, we have posted the thematic report from IBTTA's annual meeting in Vancouver on the home page of our website, ibtta.org. We have completed our Conference and Webinars 2013. You may visit our website for a list of scheduled conferences, webinars, and events at ibtta.org/events. Please take a look and mark your calendars now. Also, some individuals have asked about obtaining professional development hours for this webinar. IBTTA is not able to give credits, but we are happy to give you a certificate for attending the webinar, and it's up to each individual to submit it your appropriate accrediting organization to obtain the credit. If you'd like to receive a certificate after this webinar, please email Kathleen Davis at kdavis@ibtta.org. Again, that's kdavis@ibtta.org. So, we're pleased to have 2 highly regarded presenters today, Suzanne Murtha from the OmniAir Consortium and Ted Osinski from Met Labs. The presentation portion of this webinar will take approximately 35 minutes and will be followed by Q&A. You may ask a question at any time using the questions dialog box on the right side of your screen. We'll monitor questions throughout the webinar, but will not address them until after the presentations have been completed. If any questions are not answered during today's session, the presenters will work on them after the webinar, and we'll post the responses on our website in the next 48 hours. We'll post the slides and audio portion of this webinar on our website by close of business today. So let's get started with introductions. Suzanne Murtha is the Executive Director at OmniAir Consortium, as well as the proprietor of Murtha DBE Consulting. Before undertaking these most recent roles, Suzanne developed the ITS and tolling practice for TÜV Rheinland. Prior to that, she managed the government relations practice at Capsch Trafficom and oversaw vehicle communications at ITS America. Suzanne has been involved in the automotive industry for over 10 years in a number of capacities, including as an analyst for PricewaterhouseCoopers, strategy analytics, and an economist for Standard & Poor's DRI. Ted Osinski is a Director of Emerging Technologies at Met Laboratories. Ted was involved in developing and deploying several emerging technologies, including the first commercial document management system, object-oriented development, XML, and RFID, and has developed several certification programs, including EPC Global. Ted and his Met Labs team participate in several standards organizations and consortia, such as W3C, GS1, EPC Global, AIM Global, Wi-Fi Alliance, A4WP, and OmniAir. Ted is a past member of W3C Advisory Board, a current member of AIM Global RFID Expert Group, and is chair of the OmniAir Certification Services, or OCS. He's also actively involved in the US DOT Connected Vehicle Program. Suzanne and Ted, thank you for being here today. Suzanne, let's begin with you.
Great. So, if we can get to the first slide here. So OmniAir and OCS, we're sister organizations. OmniAir Consortium is a nonprofit trade association that is dedicated to the development of the concept of certification within intelligent transportation systems. Unlike many other technical industries, ITS does not have a solid certification system, and we don't have certification standards for many of our products and systems. So that's something that OmniAir is working to promote. As part of our promotion of that, we have a sister organization called OmniAir Certification Services, or OCS. OCS is a completely independent organization from OmniAir. It has its own board of directors, it has its own finances, and the only thing that we share is an executive director. OmniAir Certification Services is dedicated to the actual certification of ITS equipment, and we're happy to certify any system or product that anyone has that any client would like to develop specs for testing, requirements for testing, more specifically. So we will test any requirements that anyone has. We are independent. Our board of directors is comprised of members of agencies and also experts in testing specifically. We don't have any vendors on the board of OCS. OmniAir, however, does have vendors and is open to all parts of the industry, and we would hope that we have members in OmniAir who are interested in promoting certification and developing requirements to which OCS can independently test. So I'm going to go over these high-level items about OCS and OmniAir, and then I'm going to pass the presentation to Ted Osinski, who is the chair of OmniAir Certification Services, and I'm hoping that Ted can talk through. We have some very good slides about how certification works exactly. OmniAir manages several areas within intelligent transportation service systems. The first one is electronic payment. We've been working on a standard called EPSNIS for quite a few years. Most recently, we've updated the EPSNIS standard to include more updated language around licensing. So if anyone would ever be interested in EPSNIS, which EPSNIS is about payment systems, and it's standards around payment systems. So if anyone would ever like to include that in a bid, that would be available for anyone to use. We also have, in the tolling world, we also have 6C. We have a standard for 6C interoperability. We're also hoping someday to be working with the EasyPass organization, and we're also hoping to be working to help facilitate the testing and the approach for national interoperability, specifically to help test the requirements which our clients might bring forward for national interoperability specifications. OmniAir has also done over $1 million worth of work with the U.S. Department of Transportation to help develop certification and testing concepts for the connected vehicle market. So our members have all worked with U.S. DOT to help develop testing and certification for the safety pilot that's going on in Michigan right now and for other DSRC projects. We're also looking forward to FMCSA is putting out standards for the commercial vehicles, for the onboard recorders for commercial vehicles. So we're looking forward to working with FMCSA on commercial vehicle recording. And finally, we've had some members who brought forth the excellent idea of approaching applications. So with that, we would start to develop standards for testing and requirements for testing for applications for connected vehicles, which is very exciting. We're also open to expanding our portfolio to any other areas that are interesting. We've also been talking recently about automated vehicles. So how would we certify automated vehicles? What would we certify there? And what would be the requirements for certification if there were certification? OmniAir Certification Services, the testing side of OmniAir, supports all of those. And I'm going to pass the slides to Ted so that Ted can talk more specifically about exactly how certification works. Thank you, Ted.
Thank you, Suzanne. I'm Ted Osinski. So I'd like to take you through the OmniAir Certification Services testing approach and give you a good understanding of our approaches and what we do and how we do it. You are all familiar, the whole industry is quite familiar with testing. You have all done it. OCS approach is quite different. It is different it's because it's based on a system engineering approach. and I will explain in the following slides what it really means. It is driven by the user groups. We will not take a project unless we have a solid user group behind it, like 6C user group in our first example. We are based on open standards. We want to work from the open standards that are available to everyone, that vendors can build devices based on them. And there are also conformance test specifications available, as well as interoperability test specifications available. We also use best practices. For example, for accreditation, we want to use commercial available test equipment or test tools. We also will work with other similar certification organizations. We will recognize their programs if it's warranted. This approach is quite different because it offers on-demand testing. Whenever a vendor has a device that's ready for testing, for certification testing, we can accommodate that vendor. They can come and do the testing right away. They don't have to wait for half a year for the shootouts or other test means. And this approach our goal here is this approach will enable eventually multi-sourcing for toll operators. They will be able to choose from competing vendors. They will be able to choose the best devices, and they will have OmniAir reports that will help them with that selection. So what you see on the slides here is really our generic certification framework. Is based on best practices. It's any bona fide certification organization has them. They have certification policies, they have accreditation parts to accredit test labs, and they have test tools, qualified test tools that will do the job of testing. And we at OmniAir have developed such a framework. It's applicable to any certification program that we will develop. Right now it's available for the 6C, but it can be easily extended for national interoperability, for IAG or DSRC certification testing. We do have, for each of the blocks, like certification policy, we have developed policy and process documents. We have developed certification mark and the usage guidelines, how to use that certification mark and not to misuse it. We have dispute resolution process. When a device comes for testing, we could very well find a problem with the actual specification or conformance specification or interoperability specification or even test tools. We do have a process of how to handle the issue resolution here. Okay, we also have the application, obviously, with the pricing for the devices that we test. An interesting part here is the accreditation. We welcome test labs. We want test labs to be part of the community. We want those test labs to compete with each other and provide, the same certification services as any other test labs. So for that, we have developed test lab accreditation criteria, which is really like a list of requirements for them and conditions for participation. We have accreditation certificates and, of course, application for accreditation. We also recognize that the test tools are really provide a value to the whole community, not just the test labs, but also to the vendors. We would like to use, and we use commercially available test tools. Those test tools have been qualified and validated by OCS, and they produce identical results. So any test labs that uses them can replicate the same results. Furthermore, those test tools should be made available, should be purchased by vendors that develop devices. They can use them for their pre-testing, and that will really enhance the chances of passing certification testing. And for those vendors, we'll have qualified tool mark and usage guidelines as well. As Suzanne have mentioned, we do work with outside organizations like 6 user groups. They provide requirements to us. OCS does not develop requirements, but we develop test specifications based on the requirements. Can someone advance the slide for me, please? One before? Before? Yes, thank you. I'd like to take you now through the process of certifying a typical device. And again, this is an on-demand process. Whenever a vendor has a device for certification, the applicant will contact OCS and provide some information on implementation and the test for the device. OCS will verify that the applicant is in good standing or is a member of OmniAir, for example. And then the applicant deals directly with the test lab, with the authorized test lab. They provide us with more information on the device and the test, and they schedule certification testing with the test lab. Test lab performs certification testing and on submitted implementation and the test, on submitted device. And then test lab submits test report with a recommendation to the OCS, OmniAir Certification Services. OmniAir Certification Services then reviews the reports, and believe me, the OCS board which does it really is very thorough. They ask tough questions. It's not a rubber stamp. And then they decide on making a decision on certification based on submitted reports. And OmniAir then issues, OCS issues certificates and publishes the report on the website. And the vendor can use then that OmniAir certified logo, as you see on at the bottom, on the devices. We also publish that vendor device on OCS website. Please, next slide. Now, the first, what you see here on this slide is our real approach. It's basically divided into several layers. The current testing that you're all familiar with is really start and end with field testing done by the toll agencies. We have introduced two lower layers, two additional layers. The first one is the conformance testing, and the second one is OmniAir Certification Services, interoperability testing. Conformance testing, we recognize other organizations that do certification, such as GS1 EPC Global, OMET Labs, which is based on ISO 18000-6C certification. And just one note here, because I know we'll get questions. We use ISO 18000-6C here because everyone is familiar with this, but ISO has actually renamed the standard to ISO 18000-663. Please remember that. So first of all, OCS recognizes conformance testing and accepts the results from other testing. The device that then comes to OmniAir for testing will have to produce the certificate from GS1 EPC Global or OMET Labs or other organization. And then OCS will conduct baseline interoperability, environmental testing, and applied interoperability. And those three tests have been developed based on 6 user group requirements. So the baseline interoperability testing is meant to ensure that a device, a pair of devices such as a tag and a reader, they interoperate in laboratory conditions. And the applied interoperability means that device will operate under the test conditions that resemble toll environment with some performance parameters such as different speed and antennas and angles and so on. Environmental testing is meant to prove that the device works in certain temperature ranges, humidity, and other environmental parameters. So these two layers that we have introduced are like selection layers. In order to be considered by OmniAir Certification Services, a device has to be certified for conformance, and then a device has to pass all baseline interoperability tests to be even considered for applied interoperability tests. Okay, and then OmniAir Certification Services issues a report, grants certification, and this then the toll agency should consider those devices who have been certified before when they respond to the RFP. This way, toll agency can reduce the cost of field testing, can scale it down perhaps, and be sure that the devices interoperate before they enter into the field testing. And furthermore, if they have reports from several devices, the OCS reports, they can compare apples to apples. They can, on each parameter, they can see how exactly that the device have done during the lab testing. Next slide, please. Let's talk about conformance testing. This test is done in a laboratory conditions. We make sure that all the devices implemented all functionality defined in the specification correctly. We test the radio and protocol commands. We make sure that the waveforms are properly formulated. We make sure that the device supports each modulation correctly. We test all commands. We make sure that the tag responds to the reader in a correct amount of time as defined in the specifications. We can all prove it right there, and we can replicate and repeat the test over and over again. We also do the testing here to ensure that the reader does not interfere with other readers by making sure they implement the masks correctly. A device here has to pass all tests to obtain certifications, all mandatory tests, and there's about, I think, 80 of them. It's not easy to pass. I will tell you that most devices fail. About 50% of devices fail the conformance testing, but they come back and they get recertified. They fix the problem. Now imagine that if they were not tested for conformance and they would go up the chain, they would go into a field testing. Okay, then right there will be a problem. So this is a big and important test. Next slide, please. Now, once the device passes conformance test, it goes into baseline interoperability testing. And this is really where the OCS starts doing the testing. We have a series of about 300 test cases there, that we test the tag or a reader with. What you see here is an example how we test here. We make sure that the testing is being done by the automated scripts that are residing on the reader. If a tag is submitted for testing, the tag is subjected to extensive tests. We test to make sure that the tag goes through the state transitions from being selected to work with the reader to being read, to being locked, and to being killed. We do extensive testing on the memory according to the specifications provided to us, requirements provided to us by the 6C user group. We make sure that we can write the data correctly, and read it and lock it, and also try to make sure that, for example, we can kill it, or we cannot write the data to the locked or permanently locked tag. So without this test, typically would take about a week to maybe 10 days if we didn't have it computerized. But because of that, we can do it in 1 day. Next slide. So here's just an example of a couple of examples of the 300 test cases that we say. The first one tells you that, hi, you should be able to read the EPC. EPC is electronic product code, but it's really the information that the 6C user group it's like a key that the 6C user group defined to store. I think right now it's 96 bits, and they have all sorts of information like unique identifier, vehicle type, and so on. We test that. We make sure that when that information is logged, you can access it, but also you should not be able to modify it, which is the second test case. And we repeat those tests with changing several parameters to make sure that that information is accessible and is secured properly, and so on. A very extensive test, very, very useful. Next slide, please. So in summary, for baseline interoperability, we have 300 test cases that fully exercise the state transitions for the tags and the readers. We change a lot of parameters. We need about 50 tags to complete test cases. Most of them get killed in the end by issuing kill commands. We develop a script, a Perl-based script, which is kind of a computer platform independent, that we ask the reader to implement it. So if the reader comes for testing, they will have to implement that script. we give them the Perl source code, and they can implement it in Perl or in Java, whatever they want, or C#, whatever they want. It's important to notice that we use reference readers and tags. So we use, if we get a tag for testing, we use reference reader to test with, and vice versa. This is a very proven approach. We have tested a lot of tags so far. We didn't have any challenges yet. That means something that we do have a good process and the test tools. And we do have a confidence after baseline interoperability that a tag and a reader interoperate in a laboratory environment. And so this baseline interoperability is really baseline for applied testing. We make sure when we go into the next level, the tags and reader interoperate. Next slide, please. Before we go to applied interoperability, I'd like to talk a little bit about environmental tests. These are important tests. We develop those tests based on 6C user group requirements. So as part of those tests, we test for temperature. We do have ranges of -40 to 90 plus Celsius. We test for humidity. We test for UV and for infrared testing. And in the future, we plan to add shock absorbance and salt testing. This test typically, the whole test typical test take about a week, and they're being done in parallel to us doing baseline interoperability and applied interoperability. These are, I would like to point out that there's no failure here on those tests. We just record the results. So if a tag, for example, works in, it doesn't work in -40 degrees centigrade, we just record it. It may not be of concern to a toll operator in Arizona, for example, okay? But they will know it, that the tag will not work in a lower temperature. But it will be a concern to a toll authority in Maine, for example. So all this is available. Next slide. Now we talk about, this is our real last part of testing that we do, is applied interoperability. Applied means that we test in an environment that resembles toll. And what we do usually testing at the Crofton site operated by Xerox, and we do it courtesy to Xerox, which is a big thank you to them again. And we do the testing there with tags mounted on vehicles, and we change performance parameters. So it's really kind of, this is really performance testing that we do. So next slide, please. So what are the parameters that we work with? So we do measure the distance, the read zone. We establish the read zone for the tag. We measure the characteristics of the field, the RF characteristics, radio frequency characteristics. We mount a tag on a specific height to simulate a motorcycle or a car or a truck. Tags are also placed at different positions on the windshield. In the center, on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side. We test those tags. We attach them to the vehicle, and we drive the vehicle at the speeds of 0, 15, 35, 65, and 85 miles per hour. We also change the orientation of the tag on the windshield. We change the angles there, and we measure, how well the tag performs. For the reader antenna, which is mounted on the gantry, we usually rely on the vendor recommendation for the angle, but we do have a standard default that we use. So we usually test with two orientations. And then we also analyze the interference from the vehicle adjacent lanes. So these are, quite extensive tests. It takes 3 or 4 days, about, I would say 3 days of solid testing to go through all the tests. And next slide, please. What you see here is just an example of our data capture sheet. You see that we, for example, right here, we have the tag orientation on the vehicle. We see the angles, and we measure the vehicle speed, and we capture the results, how many reads or writes we have. to the tag and at what distances as well. And these data sheets are used then to develop test reports. And those test reports essentially are available made available to the vendor and to the toll operators. And next slide, please. And next slide. One before, please. Okay. So in summary, for the applied interoperability test, this test is built on baseline testing, and it reduces the need for shootouts. It allows fair comparisons among devices. So you have the test reports from all these other tested devices. They are all similar. You can compare apples to apples. We are very comfortable, very convenient, very certain that the devices that go through it will interoperate. And a 6 user group has some statistics to prove it. These tests are very systematic, so we collect the data and we'll, through the process, we adjust the process, we improve the processes, and all the time. This essentially process will eliminate devices that do not qualify for IOP, for the shootout. So this is a really good selection process at a minimum for toll operators. They should consider that. And next slide. Now, lastly, I would like to talk about accreditation program. It's a big part of OmniAir vision and OCS vision. We know we need test labs, accredited test labs that would be available, throughout the world to do the testing. The requirements for the labs is that you have to have a quality system based on ISO 17025 implemented. This is really the most difficult part. Most labs that we have been dealing with, they have this. But if you want to become a test lab and you don't have it, you should really start working on it right away, because it's not an easy job to implement this. There are consultants that can help you do it, and it could take 3 months to implement this. What this quality system based means that you have to have documented procedures to prove that you can have a record retention procedures, you have trained staff, you have calibration records of your devices, and stuff like that. So this takes time to develop and implement. But if you don't have it, you should have it anyway, because it will improve your efficiency of an organization. The current scope that we offer is 6C testing. However, next year we plan to add at least a couple of more scopes, probably national interoperability or DSRC or maybe IAG. So there will be other scopes that an accredited test lab can add. As a lab, you also need to use qualified test tools that right now they're based on national instruments, and you have to be a member of OmniAir. The accreditation process goes as follows. There's initial accreditation. You apply to OCS. We do the assessment of you, and we send the independent auditor, which is usually with A2LA organization credentials, and they will review your readiness. And then upon recommendation, the OCS board will approve you as an accredited test lab. And then there's a yearly assessment. On the first year after initial accreditation, there's a desk audit. That means nobody has to go to your site. We just do it via phone and via computers, emails, conferences. And every second year there's a physical audit. So the independent auditor will go and audit you. Okay. And that takes about 1 day to audit, and the initial accreditation takes about 3 days. As far as the fees are concerned, just wanted to point out here that the test fees that the lab charges the client are determined by the lab, not the OCS. Okay, so, and that's really good because if we have multiple labs, they can compete, they can charge different prices, and the vendor has a choice. So that's very important. And then, you know, a vendor has to pay, the test lab, has to pay OCS accreditation fees, reassessment fees, and then when a test lab is doing a testing of the device, the test lab has to collect OCS certification fees from the client and then pass them over to OCS. OCS, we have been talking to probably 3 test labs in the past few months, and we hope that some of them will get accredited. So there's also, just wanted to let everyone know, we have openings for accredited labs, and we would, you know, we'll open to accredit more labs. We know there's a benefit to have accredited test labs. So if you're interested, and please contact Suzanne or myself, and we'll discuss it with you. I think this concludes my part, and I will turn it over to Suzanne.
Hello, let's see. Okay, so I wanted to give an overview of what OmniAir has been doing for the past year and what our plans are for 2014. So last year, one of our big activities was we responded to the FCC NPRM with regard to the use of 5.9 gigahertz for activities other than connected vehicle and vehicle safety applications. There was some concern about some vendors wanting to lobby the FCC to open up 5.9, so OmniAir took a nice stand explaining to the FCC how there have already been many deployments of 5.9 throughout the country. We wrote a great response. We probably had about 15 to 20 different test beds and test situations listed on that response. We got great feedback on it. Some folks told us it was one of the best responses that they read, and that our list was great. So we were very pleased to be helpful in helping to preserve 5.9 gigahertz for use in connected vehicles. That was a lot of our clients are working on that, so that was good to have our members represent our members in that way. We grew membership this year. We will have added 3 new members by the end of the year. We also updated our website to make it clear about the markets that we serve and what the role of our members are in that activity. We also certified 3 OCS, certified 3 more organizations for the 6C program, and we also updated our EPSIS licensing agreement. We're looking forward to the end of the year to make some more announcements about new members. We recently added VTTI, and we're looking forward to competing next year and early next year in the certification services RFP that's coming out from USDOT in Q1 of 2014. So we'll be doing that activity, and we look for your input on that. Also in 2014, we will be hoping to add some more accredited labs for OCS. We're also looking for some new members for OmniAir as well. And we're looking for members and interest in participating in developing certification programs for each of the 5 interest areas that I mentioned. The connected vehicle, the back office, as well as the commercial vehicle work. And I think that's all we have.
All right, Suzanne and Ted, thank you very much. And we do have some questions coming in from the participants. The first question: are the 6C certification test procedures available to toll agencies and consultants?
I will take that. The test procedures are available they have been developed by OCS. They are available to accredited test centers. There will be really little use for the toll operators or consultants to look at them. What we have done, we have developed a white paper on the process and the procedures, which gives you more information about this. I think the white paper is listed on OCS website or OmniAir website.
And if it's not, we can. If anyone has problems with that, we can send them a copy of that. No problem.
Yeah.
Very good. Next question. What does conformance testing involve?
The conformance testing involves testing to make sure that a tag or a reader meet all the necessary and mandatory clauses in the specification. In the ISO 18000-6C or 63 specification. That means we check for the radio waves, we check for the modulation types, we check for various masks, we check for tolerances, for the timings. It's done by the specialized NI-based, National Instruments-based equipment, which is commercially available. I think if you are a vendor, it's a must for you. If you're a 6C vendor, you should definitely procure this and use it. It's about 80 or so tests that are run on a tag or a reader using this specialized test equipment. It's beyond going into real deep detail. I don't know what else I can say. I would. I suggest that if somebody wants to really have a detailed overview, I can provide a lot more information on this topic.
Okay, Ted, that's great. Another question. When testing a reader for 6C interoperability, what is the process? Are different vendor transponders used? And the comment is, we all learned some good lessons from Title 21 testing.
That's a very good question. So I did mention that we use reference tags. So if a reader is used for testing, then first of all, the reader has to implement the script, the Perl-based script, and then we test it against a set of reference tags. These are the tags that we know they work, they have been certified, and we know how they respond. And so we're quite sure then that when we test the reader, we know where we stand. So we use the reference tags. Several vendors.
Okay, very good. Another question. How long is the certificate valid? How often do vendors have to be recertified?
Another excellent question. The certificate is issued for a device, for that version of the device, for that release of the device. It's valid all the time for the device. But if a vendor upgrades the software, the firmware, or anything else, the device has to be recertified.
Okay. Suzanne, anything to add?
No, that's it. Thank you, Pat.
Okay. Another question. What about RF read zones? Its footprint and response of the transponder within the read zone.
Well, we do the measurements when we go on the into the field. Into the field, we do measure the read zone. We do measure the RF characteristics, so it's a known test environment for us. We do definitely measure it and work from that. It's part of the job.
Very good. Here's a question I think for Suzanne. Does OmniAir plan to have another webinar about certifying applications?
Yes, we do. We will be we'll be doing several webinars over the next few months. We hadn't planned to do one specifically on certifying applications, but I'm happy to take that on as an activity, and I think that would be a lot of fun. So look for that because we're going to do several webinars over the next few months.
Very good. In the testing with vehicles, is it a caravan of vehicles emulating congestion tolling conditions or just single vehicle tests? In real life conditions, we have a mix of transponder equipped and non-transponder vehicles.
I guess this is for me. What we do, we do typically about about 3 or 4 vehicles following each other. Again, I did say that this is not a replacement of the current test that's being done, the field testing that's being done by toll operators. So it's really like a subset of what they do. We do about 3 or 4 vehicles, different type of vehicles, sedan or SUV, following each other. But we don't do it to the extent that what's being done currently in the field testing.
Okay. Well, let's see. Another question. How or why will the OCS certification process lead the tolling industry to standards?
Well, that's the mother of all questions here. So we think that OCS value is that we have an independent organization with no, that's consisting of toll operators, test labs, no influence from the vendors. We use open standards, and we produce unbiased reports, and I think all of these factors will, I think, eventually drive the industry to accept this type of testing. This type of testing offers you that you can use multi-sourcing in the future. You can do on-demand testing. You can reduce the cost of the testing, and we can definitely will be prepared to handle any directions that NIOP, National Interoperability, will take. Whether it's a multi-protocol vendor, we can do it, or multi-protocol tag. The point here is that with our system kind of engineering approach, we can produce quality results that are trustworthy, that are repeatable. I hope that I answered this question. This is really we could talk for hours about this, but I think the industry is essentially now entrusting OCS because of our processes and our approach to conduct the certification and we hope to play a role in the national interoperability.
Okay, thank you very much. Ted or Suzanne, what type of product upgrades of a previously certified tag or reader require retesting and recertification?
Using ISO 18060. I will tell you that there's a good chance that anytime you upgrade the software on that reader, you'll break something. You'll break conformance. Okay, we have seen it over and over again. So you should every time you do upgrade the reader, you should consider recertifying. Obviously, if you have the test equipment that we talked about, you can right away pre-test yourself. You will know that you have broken the conformance, which is preferred way, and then you should come to OmniAir for recertification. But so yes, anytime you make changes to software or firmware on a reader, there's a good chance that you'll break conformance. So you should recertify. On a tag, there's a less chance unless you change the antenna configuration. You should. I mean, the tags usually stay put. They're there for they last a number of years. But if you come with the same tag, and change antenna configuration, for example, you should get recertified.
Very good. Here's another question. Is the chip hardware controlled? In other words, if the chip manufacturers make changes to the hardware, would this require a device to be recertified? And how would OmniAir know that this has happened?
Okay, that's a good question. We do as we test for conformance. We also test we test tag ICs, not just not chips, not just tag itself. So every time a tag IC changes or chip changes, it should be really to up to the vendor who uses it, to the tag vendor who uses it, to make sure that they buy certified EPC Global or MATLABs or ISO certified chips, because there's a good chance that the conformance can be broken. There's no process of verification except that if a tag vendor comes to us for conformance certification, we will ask the question we'll ask them to produce us that the tag the chip is certified. So we will check for it that chip is certified. And if it's not certified, OmniAir will not accept it.
Okay, very good. One more question. Where can we find the versions of the software and firmware that is certified?
I can do that one. Oh, we don't have the versions on the website, do we, Ted? If it's helpful, I can post versions up on the website. On our OmniAir website, we have all the equipment that's been certified listed under the section and certified equipment. If it's helpful to whomever asked that question, shoot me an email, and I can also post up the versions that were certified.
That's a very good suggestion. We should have the versions and the release numbers on the website as well. I agree. Good suggestion. Thank you, whoever brought it up.
So we can post the URL where we can find the testing reports.
Not exact testing reports. We just published on the website. We just published that this specific device, is achieved OC certification. The report is available. From the vendor.
Okay.
The reports are the property of the vendor, so if someone needs to access that, they can ask the vendor, or they can ask us, and we can ask the vendor.
All right, very good. We have another question. Who certifies ISO 6C tags?
So it's either MATLABs or there's equivalent certification done by GS1, EPC Global, except that that one is much more expensive. You have to remember that GS1, EPC Global, they have developed the specification and they have submitted them to ISO or ISO. They are equivalent.
Okay.
MATLABs.com. Please go to MATLABs.com to find out more about certification.
Okay. All right. Well, let's see. I'm just going to pause here for a moment to see if we have any final questions. And while we're waiting for any last-minute questions to come in, I'll just note that we have posted IBTTA's thematic report from the Vancouver annual meeting to our website, and you can also find the schedule of all of IBTTA's education series of meetings for 2014 on the website. We will post the slides and the audio from this presentation to the website by close of business today. And if we do have any questions that are not answered during this webinar, we will reach out to our presenters and have those answered in the next 48 hours. And finally, I want to say thank you to Ted Osinski and Suzanne Murtha for your participation today. A very, very excellent presentation and discussion about OmniAir and OCS. And we look forward to seeing everybody in future webinars. And I'm just going to see if there are any additional questions. All right. Well, it looks like not. We want to wish everybody a very good day and look forward to seeing you at future webinars and future meetings of IBTTA. The next time the IBTTA Board of Directors will meet in person is January 8th through 11 in Miami. We'll be sending a notice about that meeting later today. So thanks again to Suzanne Murtha and Ted Osinski for your presentation, and look forward to seeing the slides and the audio on our website by the end of the business today. Thanks again for joining IBTTA's webinar for OmniAir. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.